Somebody in this building needs to check on the game, because right now, right this very second, the game sounds like a man who left 47 voicemails on an ex's phone at 3 in the morning and still cannot understand why she blocked his number. Is anybody out there in the crowd starting to feel a little bit bad for the game? Because I am. I really am. Somebody, anybody, please, please, please get Kendrick Lamar on the phone with the game before the game embarrasses himself into a whole new tax bracket. Get Black Sam on the phone with the game. Get TDE, get Interscope, get a carrier pigeon, get a Sky Rider, get anybody with a working signal to hand the game the closure the game is publicly begging for on every microphone in Los Angeles County, because at this exact moment in hip-hop history, the game is doing a one-man traveling circus and the headliner is his own bruised ego. Los Angeles is watching. Compton is watching. TDE is watching. Drake is watching from Toronto. Every single blog, every single podcast, every single barbershop in South Central is watching this slow-motion collapse in real time, and nobody, not one soul, is running to grab the game before he trips over his own microphone again. You already know that feeling. You already know the exact energy. It is that specific silence you give a person when you have decided, deep in your soul, that you are done. You are not angry. You are not petty. You are not writing paragraphs. You are simply gone. You have walked out of the group chat, walked out of the friendship, walked out of the entire memory of that person, and no matter how loudly they scream your name into the void, you are not turning around. That is the exact silence Kendrick Lamar is giving the game right now. That is the exact silence Black Sam is giving the game right now. That is the exact silence the entire TDE building is giving the game right now. And the game, bless his heart, cannot read the room, cannot read the temperature, cannot read the memo that was posted, printed, laminated, and slid under his front door about 10 years ago. It is not that they hate the game. It is not that they wish him harm. It is not that they want revenge on the game. It is that they simply, quietly, and completely have nothing left to say to the game. And nothing on this planet stings a legacy artist harder than being met with nothing. Yesterday, one single day after dropping his brand new album, the game slid into the passenger seat with Big Boy in Los Angeles and turned a promo run into a public plea. It was supposed to be an album interview. It became a hostage negotiation with a hostage who does not want to be rescued. Word out the camp is that the game just wants a conversation. That is it. Just a conversation. Just a phone call. Just a sit down. Just a mediated summit at Marathon Burger with a moderator and a peace treaty and matching hoodies. In his own head, the game is the reasonable one. In his own head, the game is the peacemaker. In his own head, the game is out here dodging bullets to keep West Coast hip-hop from turning into a Netflix true crime series. But every step the game takes toward that phone call takes him one step further from the reality that Kendrick Lamar has already logged off, checked out, and moved on to a completely separate architecture of his career. But here is where the story gets slippery. The version the game keeps selling to every camera he can find is that Kendrick and Black Sam owe him a return call. According to that version, the game once opened doors. He looked out for a young K-Dot when K-Dot was still stapling flyers to telephone poles. He looked out for Nipsey Hussle, rest in peace forever, when Nip was still grinding out of the Marathon parking lot on Slauson. He looked out for the whole city, in his own retelling, and the whole city has apparently ghosted him without so much as a thank you card. Slide the clock ahead a decade, blink twice, and now the same people whose come-ups the game claims to have blessed will not answer a text. That is the pitch. That is the plot summary. That is the movie the game is starring in inside his own mind. And that movie has a hero, a villain, a rising score, and a redemption arc. The problem is nobody else in Los Angeles bought a ticket to it. Now maybe the game is rewriting the timeline in real time. Maybe the game is running a very extended bit for the promo cycle. Maybe the game is genuinely convinced of every syllable coming out of his own mouth. Word around the industry has been circling for years that the game struggles with a specific kind of accountability, the type that requires a mirror and an honest afternoon. So maybe, just maybe, the game knows exactly why the phone is not ringing and is simply choosing to play the innocent uncle at the family barbecue. Either way, Big Boy did not let the game slide clean through the interview. Big Boy handed the game the microphone and then handed the game a very quiet ambush. That is the beauty of Big Boy interviews. Big boy will smile at you. Big boy will laugh with you. Big boy will nod along with you. And right when you are comfortable, big boy will drop a question in your lap that reads like an invoice for every choice you made in the last 5 years. Big boy asked the game whether the game himself might be the author of the very narratives the game keeps complaining about. That question, right there, was a scalpel disguised as small talk. And the game did not flinch. The game leaned back into the interview and told Big Boy that no, he does not create these narratives. According to the game, these narratives are simply the natural byproduct of the game being the only one brave enough to speak while everybody else throws rocks and hides their hands. The game said he could pull the curtains down if he wanted to. The game said he has been in the game long enough. The game said he has seen everything, knows everything, has receipts on everybody. But the game does not want to burn the house down. The game just wants to squash it. The game just wants a conversation between grown men. The game just wants to make sure nobody ends up like Tupac. The game just wants to make sure nobody ends up like Nipsey. The game framed the phone call not as an ego trip but as a matter of West Coast life and death. That is a heavy frame. That is a cinematic frame. That is a frame designed to make anybody who refuses to pick up the phone look like they are walking their peers toward a chalk outline. But here is the thing about heavy frames. They only hold up if the person on the other end of the phone is actually in danger. Kendrick Lamar is not in danger from the game. Black Sam is not in danger from the game. TDE is not in danger from the game. What is in danger, at this exact moment, is the game's own narrative real estate, because Kendrick has already stated his position by not stating a position, and nothing rots a rapper's momentum faster than being ignored by the people he keeps invoking. Silence is a weapon. Silence is a spell. Silence, deployed correctly by a competitor, will do more damage to a career than any diss record ever recorded. And Kendrick Lamar, whether he intended it or not, has been running a masterclass in tactical silence against the game for the better part of a decade. Big Boy then pressed harder. Big Boy told the game that Kendrick and Black Sam might simply not want to talk. Big Boy told the game that not every man in this planet wants to pick up the phone and hash it out. Big Boy told the game that some people can absolutely have a problem with you and just choose to keep it moving without a single explanation attached. And the game, to his credit, admitted that yes, that is a lane too. That is a lane a man can drive down. That is a lane where a man says nothing, does nothing, and expects nothing in return. For a full 6 seconds inside that interview, the game accidentally described exactly what Kendrick Lamar has been doing for years, and then, almost as if catching himself mid-confession, the game pivoted right back into demanding the phone call anyway. But then the game slid right back into his original frame, because his original frame is the whole promo. The game pivoted into the Kendrick and Drake situation. The game said Drake is family. The game said Drake and him talk frequently, as recently as yesterday. The game said Top Dawg used to be family too. The game said used to be family too. The game said the internet keeps painting him as somebody who picked a side, but he swears he did not pick a side, he just kept his phone open to the friend who picked up. The game said he loved everything about the pop-out concert Kendrick threw. The game said he genuinely loved seeing Kendrick unify the city. And then the game explained the real reason he was not at the pop-out. Too much gang politics. Too much red versus blue. Too much of Los Angeles's oldest arithmetic. Too much history sitting inside one venue for one man to safely navigate. Because the game, in his own words, is not a non-affiliate rapper. The game is a West Side Bompton Cedar Block Piru rapper. The game will still be that rapper when he is 60. The game will still be that rapper when he is a grandfather with a Costco membership. The game compared himself to a general in the army who does not retire his stripes just because he hit an age. The game explained that his mother is still Hoover Crip to this day. The game explained that his father is still Nutty Block. The game explained that his mother is a grandmother and she still is not walking into Hoover Village wearing a Houston Astros hat like everything is casual. The game explained that gang culture in Los Angeles is not a costume you slide out of, it is a birth certificate you carry to the grave. The game explained that when he steps into any room in this city, the room reshuffles around his affiliation whether he wants it to or not. The game said that is precisely why he stayed home the night of the pop-out. His presence would have interrupted his homies moment. His presence would have dragged politics into a celebration. So the game fell back. That, by itself, is one of the most emotionally intelligent decisions the game has publicly made in years. Now, that answer, if you close your eyes and listen to it in the abstract, is actually one of the most self-aware statements the game has offered in years. That answer acknowledges that his own affiliation has consequences. That answer acknowledges that his presence carries weight. That answer acknowledges that stepping into somebody else's moment is not always a favor. That answer, delivered by a lesser rapper on a smaller stage, would have gone viral for its maturity alone. But the very next sentence out of the game's mouth undid the maturity, because the game turned right back around and started asking Kendrick and Black Sam to pick up the phone. That is the tragedy of the entire promo run. The game is inches away from wisdom, and then he leans away from it every single time. You cannot have it both directions, family. You cannot recognize that your presence at the pop-out would have been a political landmine and then insist that your presence in Black Sam's phone log should be an easy answered call. You cannot simultaneously say I understand why I was not invited and also say I do not understand why they will not call me back. Those are the same phone number, family. Those are the same closed door. Those are the same one-way street with the same do not enter sign nailed to the same lamppost. The game has been staring at that lamppost for a decade and still keeps asking why the road is blocked. Slide the clock ahead a decade and the game is now doing what a lot of legacy artists do when their generation has moved on. He is knocking. He is knocking louder. He is knocking with a full drum line behind him. He is knocking with a marching band. He is knocking with the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Because there is nothing worse in this business than being the guy who used to open doors and now cannot get one open for himself. There is nothing worse than being the guy who invented a lane and then had to watch the lane get repaved without his input. There is nothing worse than being the guy who feels like he wrote the recipe and now the restaurant will not seat him. That is a specific type of career grief that only legacy artists understand, and the game is currently living inside that grief with the volume turned all the way up. And this is where the story cracks wide open, because somebody, please somebody, break the news to the game. There is a third option that the game has apparently never considered on any of these promo runs. There is a lane called I do not want to talk to you. There is a lane called I have made peace with never talking to you. There is a lane called I hope you are well from a very safe and very silent distance. There is such a thing as a grown man drawing a line, planting a flag on that line, and never crossing back over it, no matter how many interviews you do about wishing he would. That third option is real. That third option is legitimate. That third option is exactly where Kendrick Lamar and Black Sam have been parked for years, and the game keeps driving by that parking lot looking for a spot next to them. Kendrick Lamar is standing on that line. Black Sam is standing on that line. TDE is standing on that line. And they are not standing there because they hate the game. They are not standing there because they secretly miss the game. They are not standing there because they are waiting for the perfect apology in the perfect envelope with the perfect handwritten note. They are standing on that line because they saw something they did not like, filed it, closed the drawer, and walked into a different decade of their own careers. That is discernment. That is boundary work. That is the version of masculinity that does not require a podcast to be performed. That is the version of manhood that PGN culture keeps forgetting exists. And Kendrick Lamar has quietly become the poster child for it in modern hip-hop. The game keeps framing this like the only real men on earth are the men who pick up the phone. That is a frame that flatters the game. That is a frame that puts the game in the center of the moral universe. But that frame collapses the moment you consider that there is a version of manhood that says nothing at all. There is a version of manhood that lets your absence speak. There is a version of manhood that does not owe you an explanation for why the exit door closed behind them. There is a version of manhood where the phone call you are begging for was actually made 10 years ago, and it went straight to voicemail, and the voicemail said nothing because the voicemail was the message. The game has to understand that a conversation is a two-way street with a green light on both ends. The game has to understand that you cannot guilt somebody onto a phone call. The game has to understand that you cannot shame somebody into a phone call. The game has to understand that you cannot use Tupac's memory, Nipsey's memory, or the shadow of West Coast tragedy as leverage to force a call. That is not communication. That is coercion dressed up in a hoodie. That is emotional blackmail in a fresh pair of chucks. That is not how peace treaties are signed. That is how ultimatums are delivered. And ultimatums, in the era of grown men with boundaries, are read, filed, and ignored. And here is the part that is going to sting. Kendrick Lamar is probably not thinking about the game. Black Sam is probably not thinking about the game. TDE is probably not thinking about the game. On any given morning in Los Angeles, when Kendrick opens his eyes, the game is not the first item on the agenda, not the second item on the agenda, not the 10th item on the agenda. Kendrick is thinking about tour dates. Kendrick is thinking about his family. Kendrick is thinking about his kids. Kendrick is thinking about PG Lang. Kendrick is thinking about the next chapter of the Kendrick Lamar catalog. The game is not in that room. The game is not in that iCloud folder. The game is not on that calendar. The game is not on that itinerary. And Black Sam is running a business that involves more than one radio-friendly reconciliation. Black Sam is running a business that involves an entire ecosystem of artists, projects, and dollars that has absolutely nothing to do with the game. That is not disrespect. That is architecture. Some people build lives in which you simply do not have a seat. And Kendrick and Black Sam have quietly, professionally, and without commentary built exactly that kind of life. The game keeps knocking on a door that does not lead into their house anymore. There is no house at that address. There is no room. There is no chair pulled out for the game at that dinner table. The mailbox has been removed. The doormat has been rolled up. The porch light has been switched off. And somewhere inside that house, Kendrick Lamar is not thinking about the man on the porch, because there is no porch anymore. That address was demolished a decade ago and a new life was built on the same piece of land. And this is where the West Coast gets uncomfortable, because the game is not a small figure. The game is not a rookie. The game is a legitimate legacy artist who has moved units, who has sold out arenas, who has helped stitch together an era of Compton hip-hop that a lot of younger artists still borrow from. The game earned his stripes. Nobody in this building is disrespecting the discography. Nobody in this building is downgrading the catalog. The documentary is still one of the strongest debut albums the West Coast has ever produced. Doctor's Advocate still slaps. LAX still slaps. The Jesus Peace era still slaps. The 1992 era still slaps. The game's cultural footprint is real. Nobody is taking that from him. But cultural footprint and current relevance are not the same currency. Cultural footprint buys you legacy. Cultural footprint does not buy you a return text from an artist who has moved into a completely different orbit. That is the harsh math of the modern industry, and the game is standing at the register realizing his credit does not stretch that far anymore. And here is where the Big Boy interview really got interesting, because the game tried to reframe the phone call as something noble. The game said he does not need to talk to Dot every day. The game said he does not need to talk to Black Sam every day. The game said he functions fine being the game. The game said his life is thriving. The game said the only reason he keeps invoking the phone call is because the internet controls the narrative. The game said if he could just get on the phone with these guys, the internet would not be able to spin the story anymore. The game said he grew up in a house full of gangsters where his mother and his father made him say what he felt. The game said even when his father asked him what was wrong and he said nothing, his father would push. His father would say, "Tell me what is wrong so we can get to the root of the issue and then fix it." The game said that is why he is communicative. The game said he is all about talking things out. That, family, is a beautiful sentiment. That is a genuinely moving flashback. That is the kind of self-disclosure that would make a lot of listeners lean in and reevaluate the game entirely. But here is the trap in that sentiment. Just because your father raised you to talk it out does not mean the other person's father raised them the same way. Just because your household ran on confrontation does not mean their household did. Just because you were taught to fight through the silence does not mean everybody was. Kendrick's household is not the game's household. Black Sam's household is not the game's household. Watts is not Compton. Compton is not Watts. Every corner of Los Angeles produced its own emotional grammar, and demanding that another grown man communicate on your specific childhood terms is not communication, it is projection wearing a therapist's badge. It is asking somebody else to speak your father's language when they were fluent in a different one their whole life. The game then dropped one of the most telling receipts of the whole conversation. The game said he went up to Marathon Burger, Nipsey Hussle's Marathon Burger, and bought 60 burgers for the next 60 people in line. That is a real move. That is a beautiful gesture. That is the kind of thing that used to be documented on Instagram with 100 hashtags. But here is the uncomfortable question underneath that gesture. When you buy 60 burgers in somebody's honor, are you buying them because it is the right thing to do, or are you buying them because you are hoping their brother will finally call you back? Because those are two very different transactions. One is grief. One is bait. One is a private honoring of a fallen soldier. The other is a receipt you plan to bring up in your next interview. And the game just brought it up in his next interview. Which means, whether the game realized it or not, he answered his own question. The game then explained his history with Nipsey. The game said when Nip was alive, that was the homie. The game said everything was love. The game said he did what he did for Nip and then Nip went on to build his empire. The game said Nip once asked him about signing to Black Wall Street, and the game said he told Nip to go build his own thing, because the game was never trying to be Birdman, was never trying to be Suge Knight, was never trying to be the mogul who owned somebody else's masters. The game said he never signed Glasses Malone to paper. The game said he never wanted to be the reason another man was mad. The game said even back when Dot and Top Dog were building TDE, he wanted them to have their own thing. The game said he was just the guy who opened the door and stepped aside. Now, that is a self-portrait the game has painted many times. And there are versions of it that are true. There are versions of it where the game genuinely did open doors. There are versions of it where the game genuinely did put people in position without demanding a slice of paperwork. There are versions of it where the game deserves flowers he has never quite received. But there is also a version where the door the game opened was not the door those artists actually walked through, and where the flowers the game is asking for should probably come from somewhere else in the garden. There is also a version where the door was opened simultaneously by 10 other people who never mention it, because they understand that opening a door is not a cosign on the entire life that followed. Because here is the truth about opening doors. When you open a door for somebody, they walk through it. What happens on the other side of that door is not automatically your co-authored story. Kendrick's discography is not co-authored by the game. Black Sam's business is not co-authored by the game. Nipsey's marathon legacy is not co-authored by the game. And demanding a phone call 10 years later because you once held a door open at the beginning of a hallway is like demanding royalties from a house you helped somebody move a couch into. It is like sending an invoice to a wedding because you introduced the couple. It is like asking for a producer credit on somebody's marriage because you handed them the pen at the courthouse. That is not how debts work. That is not how gratitude works. That is not how the industry works. The game closed his section of the Big Boy interview by reframing the whole thing as basic manhood. The game said if he had a problem with somebody, he would call them. The game said that is what grown men do. The game said the phone call is not about desperation, it is about principle. And that framing is the fingerprint of every single game media appearance for the last 5 years. Everything, in the game's world, is about principle. Everything is about the code. Everything is about the OG law of the streets. Everything is a matter of what real men do. Everything is a lesson the game feels uniquely qualified to teach the culture. But here is the update, family. The code has been updated. Real men, in the current era, are also allowed to walk away. Real men are allowed to protect their peace. Real men are allowed to say nothing. Real men are allowed to build entire careers, entire businesses, entire families in complete silence away from a former associate who they no longer align with. That is not a violation of the code. That is an evolution of the code. And that is the update the game is refusing to install on his own operating system. The game is still running the 2005 firmware in a 2026 industry, and every push notification about Kendrick's silence is showing up as an error message he does not know how to close. Now, look, if we are being fair, and this channel is always going to be fair, the game has a point buried underneath the plea. Communication does solve problems. Grown men on the phone can defuse decades of misunderstanding. There is a version of hip-hop history where Tupac and Biggie sat on a phone for 20 minutes and everything after 1996 looked different. There is a version of hip-hop history where a lot of tragedies could have been avoided by a single conversation. So on the abstract level, the game is not wrong. Talking is powerful. Talking heals. Talking can rewrite the future. Nobody is going to sit here and tell you talking is worthless. If Tupac and Biggie had gotten on a phone, if Jam Master Jay had gotten on a phone, if Nipsey Hussle had gotten on a phone, if any of the giants we lost had gotten on a phone with the right person at the right moment, the timeline of this genre would look completely different. But talking requires two willing participants. And no matter how loudly the game pleads, no matter how many interviews he stacks, no matter how many burgers he buys, no matter how many albums he drops, no matter how many pop-outs he skips out of political respect, Kendrick Lamar and Black Sam are not obligated to pick up. They are not the villains in the game's story. They are simply two grown men who have quietly, permanently, and professionally opted out. That is the entire plot. There is no twist. There is no third act reveal. There is no hidden scene after the credits. The movie ends with the phone not ringing, and Kendrick continuing to be Kendrick, and Black Sam continuing to be Black Sam, and the game continuing to be the man on the porch of a demolished house. And this is where a hard truth needs to land in the middle of the room. The game's new album is actually pretty solid. If you have not spun it yet, spin it. The bars are there. The features are there. The production is there. The game did not phone in this project. The game showed up. The game brought his pen. The game brought his voice. The game brought his history. So somebody, please, 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 tell the game to promote the album he actually made instead of promoting the phone call he cannot get. Because right now, every headline about the game is about Kendrick, Drake, Black Sam, and TDE. Every headline is about a group of artists who did not appear on the album. Every headline is about people who are not returning the call. And that is not album promotion. That is emotional labor billed to the wrong invoice. That is doing free marketing for other people's careers while your own project waits in the parking lot. There is a version of this rollout where the game leans into the music, lets the streets rediscover his catalog, lets the culture reappraise his contributions, and quietly earns back the phone call by simply being undeniable again. But that version requires the game to close his own mouth for approximately 90 days and let the music do the talking. And based on the last 3 interviews, the game is not capable of 90 days of silence. The game is not built for silence right now. The game is built for microphones. The game is built for headlines. The game is built for the buzz that only comes when you keep stirring the pot. And that is exactly what is keeping him locked out of the very rooms he says he wants to enter. There is another version of this rollout where 5 years from now, 10 years from now, at some industry gala or some tribute night or some post-Grammy after-party, Kendrick Lamar will slide up next to the game at the bar and give him a nod. Not a conversation. Not an apology. Not an explanation. Just a nod. And that nod will have to be enough. Because that is the language men in this game speak when the phone call never comes. That is the closure the streets actually deliver. It does not come with a press release. It does not come with a podcast episode. It does not come with a joint interview. It comes with 2 eyes meeting for 1 second and then looking away, and both men walking off knowing exactly what just happened. The game should understand that not every closure is verbal. Some closures are ambient. Some closures are architectural. Some closures are simply the passage of time. And a legacy artist begging for a phone call in an interview cycle is arguably the least closure-shaped move you can make in modern hip-hop. It fuels the very narrative he says he wants to end. Every interview extends the story. Every clip extends the story. Every headline extends the story. Every tweet about a possible call extends the story. Every post about wanting to squash it extends the story. If the game truly wanted this thing dead, he would stop feeding it oxygen. Dead things need silence. Dead things need burial. Dead things need to be left in the ground, undisturbed, without a shovel visiting them once a week. But dead stories do not sell albums, family. Dead stories do not book interviews. Dead stories do not trend on the timeline. And the game, like every artist in this streaming era, knows exactly how much oxygen a live story burns compared to a dead one. So maybe, just maybe, the real strategy behind these big boy interviews is not reconciliation at all. Maybe the real strategy is relevance. Maybe the real strategy is keeping the game's name inside the same sentences as Kendrick, Drake, Nipsey, and Black Sam. Because in the current attention economy, adjacency is currency. Proximity is stock price. Being mentioned in the same article as Kendrick Lamar is a form of algorithmic annuity, and every rapper in a certain tax bracket knows it. And the game, veteran that he is, understands the market better than any of us give him credit for. That is the theory a lot of people around Los Angeles are quietly whispering. That the game is not confused about why Kendrick will not call. That the game is not lost about why Black Sam has gone silent. That the game is not actually waiting for a phone that will never ring. That the game is simply writing the biggest name drops in the culture to keep his own name inside the conversation. If that theory is true, then the game is not the scorned X on the voicemail. The game is a chess player pretending to be heartbroken because heartbreak sells better than strategy on this side of the internet. And if that theory is true, then Kendrick's silence is not an accident either. Kendrick is refusing to give the game the co-star credit the game is publicly auditioning for. That is a level of tactical restraint most rappers in this game do not possess. Either way, whether the game is playing the long game or losing the long game, one thing is not changing. Kendrick Lamar is not calling. Black Sam is not calling. TDE is not calling. And no amount of big boy interviews, marathon burger receipts, or family house flashbacks is going to change that. That door is closed. That chapter is closed. That phone line has been retired from active service. That number is out of order. That inbox is archived. That conversation, whatever it might have looked like a decade ago, is a museum piece now, sealed behind glass, viewable only from a distance. And to be clear, family, this is not a hit piece on the game. Nobody in this building is trying to bury a Compton legend. Nobody in this building is trying to disrespect the culture the game helped build. The game is a first ballot West Coast contributor. The game has bars. The game has stories. The game has scars. The game has receipts on eras of this genre that half the rap internet has never even studied. What we are watching right now is not a takedown. It is a diagnosis. And the diagnosis is simple. The game is grieving a relationship the other side has already buried, and he is grieving it out loud on every microphone that will point in his direction. That is a very human thing. That is a very painful thing. That is also, unfortunately, a very career-eroding thing to do in public in the year 2026. So the question we have to sit with, family, the one you are going to want to drop into the comments section, is a simple one. Should Kendrick and Black Sam finally break their silence and get on the phone with the game? Or is it long past time for the game to log off, promote his album, and let the West Coast breathe? There is no wrong answer. There is only your answer. Some of you are going to say Kendrick and Black Sam owe him at least one clean conversation for the history. Some of you are going to say the game is doing entirely too much and needs to sit inside his own house. Some of you are going to split the difference and say both men have a point and neither man has all the way earned the moral high ground. Both takes have receipts. Both takes have logic. Both takes have culture behind them. Both takes are welcome in this comment section. And that is exactly the debate this channel was built to host. Because in the current era of hip-hop journalism, the fans are the jurors. The comment section is the courtroom. Every scroll is a verdict. Every heart is a signature. So drop your verdict below, family. Drop your reasoning. Drop the names. Drop the receipts. Drop the era. Drop the record. Tell me if you think this is a phone call worth making or a phone call that should have been let go the moment the last decade rolled out of Compton. Tell me if you think Kendrick is being cold or Kendrick is being clean. Tell me if you think the game is being sincere or the game is being strategic. Tell me if you think Black Sam is a villain in this story or a bystander in this story. Every take is welcome. Every angle is on the table. And while you are at it, if you have been rocking with the channel through the Drake situation, through the Kendrick pop-out, through the whole extended West Coast saga, do the thing that keeps this channel breathing. Smash that like button, lock in that subscribe button, hit the little bell so the algorithm cannot hide us from you. There is another breakdown loading right now on this exact saga because the game is not slowing down and neither are we. There are follow-up interviews being scheduled as we speak. There are podcast spots being locked in as we speak. There are quotes being clipped, screenshotted, and reposted as we speak. And every single one of those moments is going to end up dissected on this channel with the same forensic care you just watched. I will catch you in the next one, family. Stay 10 toes down. Stay locked in. Stay off the phone unless it is actually ringing for you. And remember, when a grown man goes silent, he is not being weak. He is just done. Peace.